Welcome. We're celebrating the Mass. We've just celebrated it of the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross. And after the Mass, we're going to be talking a little bit about the validity of the North American Old Roman Catholic Church, Archdiocese of California. And I'm Father Tom Dowling, and the Vicar General of the Archdiocese. My co-operator here is our wonderful, wonderful cantor, Philip Carrion, and he will have a few words to say about our tradition of validity. I was ordained personally by Archbishop Yves Ramon Verestek, or people called him Ray Verestek, back in 1975. Archbishop Verestek was the Archbishop for the Archdiocese of California, active from 1940 to 1985. He was succeeded by Archbishop Joseph Ballone, who passed away in early 2022. And now we have with us, who is not speaking tonight, Archbishop Ivan Castaneda, who took over in 2022 as the Archbishop of California. We are a distinct, independent, but totally valid part of the Universal Catholic Church. We honor the Catholic tradition. We have some exceptions that we will get into at another date, but I'm here to talk about our validity. So let me go back in time. Our validity starts, of course, with the Archdiocese of Utrecht in Holland, a gentleman by the name of Archbishop Gould, who was the reigning Archbishop of Utrecht and the two suffragan sees, and they were recognized as valid, I might add, by the Roman Church. Absolutely valid. And they had relations also with the Orthodox Church. They were considered to be a distinct group, but yet everything the Old Catholic movement does, or Old Catholic Church does, is valid. It's a valid sacrament. As I tell people, my Mass is as valid as Pope Leo. Let's leave it at that. No comments. Okay. Then we come to Archbishop Gould, who traces his lineage back to the cardinal nephew, quote unquote, of Urban VIII, the Barberini, Cardinal Barberini. That's as far back as we've gone with it. There's no question about the validity. Archbishop Gould consecrated Archbishop Harold Henry Matthews from England, who was the first Old Catholic bishop, to my knowledge, in England. And then Archbishop Matthews, consecrated Prince de Landis Burgess, a member of the house, the nobility of Austro-Hungary, who came to the United States. And I don't know much about his missionary activity, and he met a gentleman by the name of Cardinal Henry Carfora, who was an Italian Franciscan who broke away from the Roman discipline and was consecrated a bishop by Prince de Landis Burgess. And there may have been some assistant bishops, but he was the main consecrator. So we have de Landis Burgess, we have Cardinal Henry Carfora, who was, as I say, was from Italy originally, but he met de Landis Burgess in the United States. And then there is then it gets into the 30s, late 30s, and we have Bishop, I'm having a 78-year-old minute, Bishop, who's next? No, after Carfora.
Bell.
Isn't it Bell?
Bell. Bell. And Bell's first name? Albert Bell. And Albert Bell has a sort of a double consecration. He was quietly consecrated by Bishop Kreuzer of the German Old Catholic Church before World War II. And people don't like to talk about it much because his politics may have been very commonplace in Germany with the National Socialists. But anyway, Kreuzer supposedly consecrated Bell, and Bell was consecrated by Carpora, and then Bell consecrated Edgar Ramon Verestek, who became the Archbishop in 1940. So we're going to look at it, for 45 years, he was the Archbishop. And Philip Carrion will have something to say about some bishops who consecrated Verestek from other lines. This was very common, by the way, then, to have different bishops consecrating you. The one big thing is they wanted to be sure that nobody could object to their validity, and that's a big deal, especially after Leo XIII condemned Anglican orders. That became a big deal. In fact, there's rumors around that Archbishop Verestek quietly consecrated a certain famous bishop of California in the Episcopal Church, James Pike. I don't have proof of that, but there's a good rumor around that he did that, because a lot of Episcopalians were extremely nervous about their validity when they cared about it, and they used to care about it. So therefore, Archbishop Verestek then went ahead and consecrated Joseph Vallone back in 1985, and Joseph Vallone, who was of Salesian and Italian background, took over the archdiocese from Verestek in 1985. Raymond Verestek lived to about 1994. He did not die immediately. And Vallone was archbishop then from 1985 till he died in 2022. And with that, then of course, Archbishop Ivan Castagneda was consecrated by Archbishop Vallone, and I believe he was consecrated in Las Vegas, if I'm not mistaken. Archbishop Vallone was then living in Las Vegas. And I don't know, maybe Archbishop Castagneda can tell me right now who the co-consecrators were.
Bustillo.
Bishop Bustillo.
And Fermin.
Bishop Fermin, both of them Old Catholic bishops. Bustillo is an interesting case. He was actually an active Roman Catholic priest in Nicaragua many years ago. Anyway, I want to get back to the whole issue of validity, so I'm going to give it over to Philip to talk about the other people involved in Verestek's validity.
Well, I think it's important first, Father, thank you for those words. I think it's important first to preface all of this and say that it is not uncommon, not only today, but 50 years ago, 100 years ago, when someone is disliked, unpopular, for whatever reason, for their personality, for how they say Mass, for their political positions, for their ecclesiastical positions, the first thing that someone can say is, you're invalid. I don't like you because you were not nice to me, because I don't like how you say Mass, because I don't like where you're from, you're invalid. And it's very unfortunate because all we need in sacramental theology is form, matter, intention. If I say the right words, I use the correct matter, which for a consecration or an ordination would be laying on of hands, and I say the correct words, we have a valid sacrament. It doesn't matter. The character of the consecrator or the consecratee does not matter. The consecrator or the consecratee could have been a scoundrel of a person, a complete fraud of a person, living an absolutely dissolute, immoral life, may not even have to have had any faith. We have examples of this throughout church history. For example, from the French Revolution, Robespierre was someone who was a confirmed Freemason, someone who was confirmed to not have any faith, but because he was noble, he was made a bishop. He consecrated many, many bishops, Catholic bishops. You can look on CatholicHierarchy.org. They were not asked to be reconsecrated. They were not, the men that they consecrated or ordained or confirmed did not have any doubt in their sacrament. And so the standard that the Catholic Church uses with regards to intention or form or matter, it's very easy, it's very simple. So I think this is very common, this type of attack, and it's very easy to disprove. And for example, Carlo Maria Vigano, who was a former nuncio to the United States, he was rumored to have been conditionally consecrated by Richard Williamson, who was a Society of St. Pius X bishop, but it hasn't been confirmed, and people are wondering, well, did that happen? Is that true? Is it valid? So these types of issues are quite common. In the case of Archbishop Villatte, there are certain individuals online, and I won't mention who they are because I don't think they are worth mentioning. I think that they hold personal grudges, and anyone can buy a website and post something on a website that doesn't make it factually true. And they are alleging that Albert Dunstan Bell could not have been validly consecrated because Carphora didn't do it. There's no proof that Carphora did it. Ergo, he's invalid. Ergo, Verostet would be invalid. Ergo, everyone who descends from Verostet would be invalid. But I've done some research into this that proves that that isn't the case. First of all, Edgar Ramon Verostet has a certificate. I've seen a copy of it. I've provided images of this to various people all around the world. It is in Latin. It is in impeccable Latin. There is a stamp. Henricus Carmelus Carphora has his stamp. It is from, I believe, 1940. You cannot fake something like that. This is not something that ChatGPT or Grok could fake. Interestingly enough, what the other accusation of why Bell could not have been valid was they say that the person who ordained him a priest was invalid, or they say Delandis Burgess wasn't valid because of this and because of that, but all of it is washed because Bell, even if we don't even count the old Catholic, what was the name of the guy from Germany? Kreutzer consecrated Bell conditionally or outright, we're not entirely sure. But even if we leave that aside, in I believe 1944, Verostet and an individual named Lowell Paul Waddle did what was called an exchange of consecrations. And people don't like that, or they may have certain feelings about that and say, well, you can't really do that. Essentially what that would be is, I'm going to say a conditional consecration of you. I'm a bishop. I come from a different line. You're going to conditionally consecrate me. And then now afterwards, we share each other's consecrations. And certain people online have said, well, that's not valid. That doesn't count. You might not like that. You might find it distasteful, repugnant, whatever. Just in case consecrations doesn't matter. The reason why this is important is because Lowell Paul Waddle descends from an episcopal line of Rene Villatte. Rene Villatte was an old Catholic priest and an old Catholic bishop who was consecrated in Sri Lanka, who was known as Ceylon, back in the 1890s. This was documented in a very prestigious publication called the AER, the American Ecclesiastical Review. A certain bishop consecrated him in the cathedral in Ceylon. The American ambassador was present. He was invited. There were sworn affidavits that this happened. So it was, in theology and canon law, this is something that would be called notorious in fact. There is a long list of people who we therefore end up at Lowell Paul Waddle in 1945, Lowell Paul 44, Lowell Paul Waddle, and Edgar Ramon Verostet conditionally consecrate each other. And I believe, by the way, Lowell Paul Waddle was a co-consecrator of the certificate for Bell when Bell consecrated Verostet. So even right then and there in 1940, that settles the issue. There was an encyclical issued by Pope Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, where he says that the co-consecrators they share the responsibility in consecration. So if there is some doubt of the main consecrator, the co-consecrators being valid, the two other ones are there is a validity. So I think it's very unfortunate that people, whether they be in real life or on the internet, because they have a dislike or a disdain or with someone would resort to saying you're invalid or you don't count. I think that's very un-Catholic. I think that's very un-Christian. I find it repugnant, morally speaking, and I think that if you do that, you probably should go to confession. But there is undisputed proof from what I've seen that Edgar Ramon Veristek was validly consecrated a bishop in 2 lines, Matthew and Villatte. Therefore, the people that descend their holy orders from Veristek will be undoubtedly valid. And if I think Father Tom and I could, if people want more information on that, we have articles written that are heavily researched. Sources have been cited going back to the 1890s that can attest and show all of this. But it's not uncommon when people say this about Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. They say, well, the man who ordained and consecrated him was allegedly a Freemason, and there's just no way a Freemason would validly intend to do this, and that's just, validity doesn't work on what if. We don't say, well, what if, Father just said this really beautiful Mass this evening. What if he wasn't really focusing at the moment he said these words? And what if he was thinking about what am I going to eat for dinner? It doesn't work that way. There has to be a positive doubt, not a what if. It's not a case of scrupulosity or just in case. Because if we open that can of worms, we can think, going back 2,000 years to our Lord Jesus Christ, we can think that about anything. There have been clandestine consecrations that have been done in the Soviet Union. I'm sure many consecrations were done in times of persecution, whether in England, in the Roman catacombs, Viking persecutions. So I find most of this chatter by individuals who were saying, for example, about Archbishop Villatte, we love you, you're our brother. We are commanding all of the priests below us to pray the office of the dead for our dear departed Archbishop Villatte. And then because a year later certain things didn't end up the way they liked, they're saying he's invalid, and all these people are invalid because they don't like how they say Mass or this or that reason. I think that's quite silly and quite unchristian. So if someone disagrees with you on something, you can't say you're invalid. It doesn't work that way. You can say something else, you can't say they're invalid. That's not how sacramental theology works. But it's not surprising. We've always had this type of issue of name calling about you're invalid, and I don't think it will go away. But for those who are interested in the truth, our Lord said, ye shall know the truth. Not ask and you shall receive. The information is all there.